welcome to TOSB Conversations, hosted by the Outstanding Speakers Bureau. I'm going to be your host, Ajit Sharma, for today's session. And I'm going to be in conversation with, like I said, with a very wonderful and insightful leadership practitioner who I will introduce in details in just a bit. For everyone who has interacted with TOSB earlier and for all the new friends that we are going to make today, let me quickly share with you what TOSB does. TOSB, the Outstanding Speakers Bureau, works very closely with some of the leading minds from across the globe who bring their cutting edge perspectives, opinions, and ideas on things that are shaping the world today. TOSB customizes various kinds of interventions for their clients from webinars to knowledge series to social media influencer engagements, workshops, leadership coaching and advisory like this one, and lots more. I'm your host, Ajit Sharma. I'm a communication expert. I'm the ambassador for TEDx in India. TEDx, as some of you may know, is the world's largest grassroots network of ideas. And I'm also a speaker coach to TED Talks India, which is the television series by TED hosted on Star Plus by Shah Rukh. And without any further delay, I'm here to welcome all of you for an exclusive masterclass on developing the inner dimensions of wholesome leadership. And we are joined by none other than Bharat Vaklu. Like I said, a lot of people have been writing to us for a masterclass discussion like this, and I think there couldn't be a more opportune time to do this. Before we start, let me welcome Bharat. There's so much that I can share about Bharat. I've had such a phenomenal time discussing things with him, getting to know him. He's the founder and president of the Vaklu Advisory. He's a transformational thought leader, futurist. He's innovative and ethical value creator. He's a leadership coach and a facilitator of beneficial change. He's also an international keynote speaker, has presented at multiple various international forums and conferences, and he's a published author of 3 books on management and leadership. Prior to his present advisory, mentoring and speaking and consulting roles, he spent more than 30 years, more than 3 decades, working as an entrepreneur and business leader within the Tata ecosystem. He started his career as a graduate engineer on the shop floors of Tata Motors in Pune long back, and after acquiring his MBA from IIM Bangalore, he was inducted into the prestigious Tata Administrative Services. He's held senior operating and board level positions within Tata Steel and Tata Sons in India, and he was the president of Tata Inc., which is the North American holding company of Tata, based out of New York. Until very recently, till about October 2016, he served with the US helicopter company Sikorsky Aircraft Corporation, which is now Lockheed Martin company in Stratford. But other than that, there are a lot of other interesting things that Bharat does. He's fond of baking cakes. You'll find him spending a lot of time in kitchen making pies. He's also a drone pilot. He flies quadcopter drones, and he's extremely passionate about preserving this planet, which is now our only home. And I can see your love for plants is one I can see just next to you. And Bharat is also fluent in multiple languages. He can speak German, Kashmiri, Marathi, many others, right? If I'm correct. So,
Yeah.
Bharat, welcome for this masterclass discussion, and we are really grateful to you.
Thank you very much, Ajit. I'm also very, very pleased to be here with you. You've been very gracious with the introductions, but most importantly, I think it's great to be with an international audience. There are people from the US, as you said, Europe and Singapore. So I'm really, really pleased to be here, and thanks to you and to the Outstanding Speakers Bureau.
Great. Bharat, I would straight away like to jump on this conversation and make the most of the time that we have. Um, this is almost like a storm in the last few months. Some of us are struggling, some of us are resilient, and some have already started building new reality, the new rules of the game. But there's something that, when we talk about, we often do not completely understand. We know that we value this a lot, but we never really get our hands around it, and that's leadership. And someone such as you who has spent so many years and somebody who has so many experiences, such a vast range of experience and stories, you're so insightful. I would love to know from you, why even talk about leadership so critically? I know that for a lot of leaders in today's time, it's a very testing period.
Of
But what do
course.
you think? Why do you think wholesome leadership is so critical?
Okay, that's a wonderful way for us to get into the conversation. First of all, let me clarify that leadership is not confined to people in high positions or to people who have a designation. I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions that it is people in positions of authority alone who demonstrate leadership. I want to clarify that each one of us, irrespective of our vocation, our profession, our position in life, we are all leaders if we are doing three things. Number one, we are consciously making an effort to bring about change for the better in the world. And this could be a change in our community. It could be a change in the company we work for. It could be a change with the way things are. It could be a way to minimize injustice anywhere in the world. So if we are committed to change something for the better, and if we have the ability to demonstrate courage and not be cautious, because typically people say, oh my God, how can I ever do this? So if we demonstrate courage, and if we are committed to change, and we want to make change that impacts the well-being and lives of all people, and not just people, even animals, even planet Earth, even the water bodies that we depend upon, then we are leaders. We are wholesome leaders. So that is my definition of wholesome leadership. And as you can see, Ajit, everybody is involved in this. It is not as if it's confined to people in the corporate sector or people in national governments around the world. No, every single one of us is a wholesome leader if we depict and express these three things that I talked about, which are number one, I'll repeat again, the ability and the desire to make a beneficial change in the world. Number two, we have the courage of conviction to not only do it ourselves, but to involve others. And number three, we do it not only for ourselves, we aren't self-serving, we are serving the greater good of not just humanity, but even planet Earth, animals, and birds, and so on and so forth, flora and fauna as well. So it's really a inclusive definition of leadership. So that said, you also asked me this question, Ajit, about these are trying times. Of course they're trying times because nobody expected that we would be having this kind of a sudden eruption of a pandemic. So it's also important for us to understand that if we are talking about wholesome leaders, what do leaders really do generally? And research has shown that if you were to look at leaders from over the ages, right from Hannibal to Abraham Lincoln to Mohandas Gandhi and to even present day leaders, you will see that they do six things, and six things they do well. What are these six things? To make it easy for our audience to understand and remember, I call them the 6 E's of leadership. Now, what are the 6 E's? They start with the English letter E. So first of all, they establish that there is something that needs to change. Even the ability to see something that is in need of changing for the better is a capability. Not everybody has it. J.R.D. Tata, the chairman of the Tata Group for many years, when he was a young boy, he would see the first airplanes flying in a beach resort in France called Hardelou, where he lived. And he got fascinated by aircraft. And he started to think when he grew older of starting a commercial airline. And people poo-pooed his idea initially because he was able to see that, look, planes can carry people from one continent to the other. So that's the first great thing that leaders do. The second thing that they do is they don't only say that, oh, this needs to be changed. They give flesh and blood to the idea. They envision. The second E, they envision what will the new thing look like. When they've envisioned the new goal, it is so much more attractive to many other people. That's when they take to the third E, which is they enlist the support of other people. They enlist others to come on board. And when they enlist people, they realize that big God-sized great goals don't get done all by themselves. They can't keep everything to themselves. They have to enlist the support of others, and then they have to empower them. That's the fourth E. They have to empower them and make sure that they have the ability to inspire these people and get them on board. Then number 5, they have to encourage them, because the going will not always be easy. There'll be setbacks, there'll be road blocks. There'll be times when they'll be completely demoralized. How does the leader make sure that even despite these setbacks, they remain encouraged? So he or she has to make sure that those things get done. And finally, the 6th E, Ajit, these leaders, they understand that they have to walk the talk. They exemplify leadership by the kind of actions that they take themselves, because people look at them. People will say, my God, if she does it, so can we. But if leaders say something and don't do what they say must be done, then you have a problem, because then you have people saying, hey, she's just talking or he's just talking. There is no substance in what they're saying. So these are the 6 things the leaders do. Now, let me ask you a question, Ajit. Do you realize that in order to do these 6 things, leaders need extraordinary capabilities? They have to be able to be credible. They have to be compassionate. They have to be creative. They have to have the courage and the ability to get things done which nobody has even dreamed about. Where do you think, what is the source of all this, Ajit? Can you think about that?
I think it's it's got me thinking to a level that I'm imagining all of this like such a story, almost like a king establishing his village, getting people to do work, and making sure that they are fulfilling, they feel a part of that entire journey. I think to be able to do all of this is I think partly you are gifted. That's what I think. Sometimes you feel people who are extraordinarily energetic, sensitive, smart, but also a lot of it is consciously built. People are mindful, people are aware of their surroundings, aware of the people. I think somewhere it's a recipe of having both. It's a science and an art, both. But I would love to know from you. You triggered such a big thought in my head.
Very well. I think, look, you touched a little bit about the source, but you didn't kind of pinpoint it. The source of all that we think, our ideation, our creativity, our compassion, our courage, our energy to get things done, it all resides in this beautifully infinite space called our mind. But the mind is energized by the life spirit. I mean, the thing that makes us alive, the thing that makes everything in this world animated and alive is the life spirit. Now, the mind, you have to imagine, is like an infinite pool when we are born. It's an infinite pool of absolutely clear water, where all these lovely possibilities of creativity, of courage, of energy, of compassion, all these are lying at the floor of the pool in abundant quantities. And so as a child, with your innocence, you pick up something and say, my God, this child is doing such great things. That innocence, that childlike innocence enables us to reach out to these gifts that we have and use them. Now, the tragedy is, Ajit, that as we grow older, we start to imbibe a lot of stuff from the outside, from our elders, from teachers, from books, from television, from advertisers. And guess what happens? That begins to cast a layer of grime and mud on these beautiful gifts that are already there and will always be there. And then what happens? Because our minds are also the storehouse of all our memories and emotions and feelings. Emotions, of course, are immediate. Feelings are the overall remembrance of emotion in our minds. Because these emotions are also stored in our mind, our feelings are stored in our minds. What happens over time is if we have felt bad about a situation, or we felt hurt, or we felt guilty, or we feel angry with somebody, all these emotions also reside in this beautiful infinite pool and create more layers of grime. So if that person turns up in your life again, suddenly this grime gets agitated and the pool gets silted and dirty. You don't get to see the gift. So when you said it's partly science, partly art, do you know why it's become that? Because we've forgotten that the gifts are there for all of us. Every one of us, Ajit, is so gifted. I can't tell you. We all have the capability to be extraordinary leaders, and we have simply covered our gifts, these beautifully radiant gifts that we have, which are lying there in our minds pool, and which are normally visible when we are innocent and calm, but which get agitated by the emotional turmoil, the guilt, the anger, and the all kinds of things that we think about. So that it gets hidden, and we say, "Oh my God, I can't do anything now." The negativity starts to get visible because we only see muddy water. We don't see the things that are already there in abundance. So now that is why I say leadership is linked with the treatment of the inner dimensions. All this beautiful, living, life giving spirit, coupled with the mind and the powers of our mind and the intelligence and our ability to sense things, is an extraordinary gift. And we have that gift in abundance. That, Ajit, is the inner dimension and the source of all great leadership. So let me also, before I hand over to you, let me also tell you that, I like to use the analogy of the analogy or the metaphor of the tree. A fruit tree, like laden with fruit, is always a joy to look at and to enjoy the fruit of. In the same way, leadership is good when the outcomes are good and wholesome. But can a fruit tree give you good, healthy fruit if the roots aren't deeply embedded in the source? In the same way, leadership also requires the inner dimension to be firmly rooted in the source of all that I have mentioned to you and which is already there in all of us. So, does that answer your question, Ajit?
Yes, yes, absolutely it does. And also it intrigues me even more now. The more I'm, listening to what you are sharing, the more I'm intrigued. And in a very, very long time, we haven't had a chance to think about leadership in a way that you are sharing because, like you said, we are so busy seeing only the muddy waters. We are so consumed with our
Absolutely.
daily chores and errands and so many things that a perspective like this just sort of clears out things for us. And I have a lot of questions, but I'm also going to request the audience, that if they have any questions, we are receiving a few questions. I think somewhere towards the end we'll take some questions, but I'm happy to take questions in between also. So if you, whoever is joining us, if you have any interesting comment to make or you want to ask anything, please feel free to post these questions and I'll direct them to Bharat. And what I'm more intrigued about now is that where do these dimensions manifest, and also when we talk about values, our guiding principles,
Absolutely.
our sense of purpose, like the very core of why we do this, right? How does that all play when we think about
Okay.
leadership in a way you are suggesting?
That's a very, very good question. So let's understand that if we need to be truly wholesome leaders, we cannot ignore our inner dimensions, all the elements of our inner dimension, which includes, by the way, things like forgiveness, gratitude, purpose, love, compassion, and all the positive aspects that are required to be a wholesome and a great leader. So, having said that, I'm sure you would agree that in order to be creative, you have to have the right kind of capability within yourself to say, look, I have the smarts, I have the intelligence to be able to think of a solution to this problem. So it really starts off by us not telling ourselves negatively that we don't have the inner resources needed to function as a wholesome leader. Having said that, the second thing is, if you have had difficulties relating with other people, and that can become an impediment in wholesome leadership, then you have to understand that, look, many of the things that people tell you make you feel bad, not because of the fact that there is something fundamentally negative in what they're saying, but very often we carry in our own mind certain ideas and conditionings which make the reaction a negative emotional reaction. So we have to start working on that as well. And the third thing that we have to do is we have to understand that if we have to work for the greater good of all, then we have to stop thinking about our own selves. We have to think of the greater things that we are capable of. And let's not forget, we are, after all, spiritual beings having a human experience. And what does that really mean? That really implies that we are travelers in the realm called planet Earth for 80, 90 human years or Earth years. And after that, we have to go back to where we came from. So in this time of 90 years, 90 Earth years, whatever good we can do, we have to do it. And for that, we have to plumb into our infinite inner dimension, our infinite dimensions of the mind, and pick out the great many gifts that are already there. And you talked about purpose. Purpose is really a combination of seeing something which needs a change for the better, and the power, the creative ability to envision what is the new order going to look like. That's what purpose is. And people say, okay, I must have a mission. A mission is simply the courage of conviction that you need to have to be able to pursue what you have said. So I'm just giving you a glimpse because, frankly, in a masterclass of no more than 45 minutes, I can only touch the surface. If I dig deep into the roots, it's going to take a long, long time. I can tell you that, Ajit.
I so wish we had that much more time with you, Bharat. But something that you said is very interesting. That when you develop this consciousness, when you are really, really mindful of your capabilities and you want to harness, cultivate it, build it to for a greater purpose. While doing all of that, when you're too aware of what you can do and what you want to achieve and all those things, does it also happen that ego comes in? That the idea of having too much confidence, or that rigidity, that now I believe I will do this or I want this. Does ego also? I mean, is it also an inner dimension?
Well, actually, ego is also part of the inner dimension, but it is like the mud in the infinite pool. It is a large object that's floating around in that pool, and we get to feel that this is the great gift that I have, whereas the beautiful gifts that are there from the very beginning are all covered up with mud. So ego is really our identification with some of the false things in ourselves. It's like this. Ajit, when you were a little infant, you didn't look the way you look right now, did you?
No.
You didn't. Exactly.
I was
now
better.
you have a bigger body, you look different, but you know that you're the same person, right?
Yes.
The same person.
Yes.
Who is this person who knows that you, Ajit, were the infant and you're now this adult? That is the real you. That's part of your interiority, your inner dimensions, which tells you that I am the constant in your life. Your body might change, you may look different, and we all will age because the body will ultimately go through these stages. But the one who knows that was the infant, I am this young man now, and I will be the old person tomorrow, is the constant watcher, the constant you, that is the real you. But now if I ignore that you and I say, oh, I'm these beautiful clothes that I'm wearing, I'm this beautiful Lamborghini that I'm driving, I'm this beautiful man or this beautiful woman who is so pretty and so beautiful, I'm losing track of the unchanging that's always there. Now I must tell you a little story here, because I'm from Kashmir, and Kashmir has been a land of mystics for a very, very long time, mystics and rishis and so on. Now in the 14th century there was an awesome mystic called Nandu Rishi. He was the spiritual successor of another beautiful lady mystic called Laleshwari or Laldev, and he was helping people to understand the unchanging self that is the source of all that comes out from our inner dimension. And he was one day invited to a grand feast by a very rich merchant, and the rich merchant invited him to this feast, and all the cooks were brought in, the judges were invited, the vizier was invited, and a whole host of other people were invited. And when this mystic came in, the Darbans, they stopped him and they said, you're not dressed properly, get out. Now, this was unknown to the host, so he kept on thinking that this guy hasn't turned up. Then somebody said, oh no, there was a beggar, we pushed him away. So the host was completely aghast and he said, my God, he's the chief guest and he's been pushed away, he's been kicked away. So he begged and entreated Nandu Rishi to come to the feast again, and Nandu Rishi agreed. But what he did was he pulled out a beautiful, gold embroidered and a pearl studded firan. That's the Kashmiri garment. And he wore that. He combed his hair, anointed some beautiful perfume, and then he went to the house of this rich merchant for the feast. And when the big thali was put in front of him to eat, guess what he did? He removed this garment, this long sleeves of this garment, put them on the thali and said, my beautiful dress, please eat. He was telling the host and everybody present that the host did not call me, the I that's unchanging. He's been calling my dress, the gold studded, the gold embroidered firan, which is not the real me. So leaders who understand this, leaders who are truly, truly working for the greater good, understand that they are not this body mind. They are that unchanging witness to all this. And that is the source of all the great qualities that we see in great people around the world. That is the only source. That's where it all comes from. Have I intrigued you further?
Yes, yes. I'm going to probably make sure that we get another masterclass from you. But I have another follow-up question to this, and I think somewhere in the beginning you mentioned that emotions and feelings play a very important role in defining what kind of a leader do you emerge as. And emotions are temporary, momentary. These are like in the moment eruptions, whereas a long-term remembrance turns them into feelings.
Correct.
Now there are a lot of viewers here who are either leaders already and they are leading their teams, companies, organizations. Some of them are leaders in making. What do they take from this conversation when they are themselves experiencing such a range of emotions and feelings?
That's a very, very wonderful question, Ajit. Thank you for asking it. You see, we have to keep one thing in mind, that if we want to use the gifts that reside in our inner dimension of our personality, in order to use those gifts, our minds have to be calm and absolutely placid. You can't be stressed and agitated and angry or guilty or hurt if you want to pick up those gifts that are already there, because by the time you are expressing these or feeling these emotions, the water is all going to be murky and muddy. You won't even see what you have to pick up. So if you want to be a decisive, capable, effective, wholesome leader, you have to be absolutely calm, and you have to understand that while emotions are normal, it's part of being human, you have to not let them hijack how you function. Because if you let your emotions hijack your ability to think calmly, you will be in a state of stress, or you'll be unhappy, and you will not be in a position to serve the greater good of all. So that's one very, very important idea. The second important idea is the greatest user of oxygen in our bodies is the brain. And the brain and the mind, if the brain is the organ, the mind is its functionality. So the brain uses the most oxygen in the body. And when the brain and the mind is agitated, when your brain is overheated, it even uses more oxygen, which means this finite resource called blood oxygen gets consumed by the brain. It doesn't leave much for the second big user of oxygen in the body, which is our bone marrow. And our bone marrow is where your immunity gets built up, because they create the platelets, the red blood corpuscles, and so on. So if you want to be a capable leader who is also energetic enough to be able to deliver on what your commitments and promises are, then you have to appreciate that calming the mind and keeping it still is an essential requirement of managing the inner dimension. Because if you don't manage it, you will not be able to even use your intelligence properly. Your what is known, see, we have multiple intelligences. We have emotional intelligence, we have spatial intelligence, we have creative intelligence, and multiple intelligences. For us to be able to use these great qualities and gifts in the dimension, we have to have a calm mind. And I can't, of course, dwell on all the techniques that exist to do that. But let me say, you talked about mindfulness. Becoming a watcher of your mind is a very, very good starting point.
How
So
amazing.
does that
Yes,
answer your
yes,
question?
absolutely. Everything that you're saying is such a gem. It's so valuable. And I have a couple of more questions, but if I may, take a couple of questions from the audience also, if I may. And
Please do.
something very interesting. One of our participants, audience members, Prashant Ghosh, is asking a question. He says that, Bharat, what you are really saying is talking about is servant leadership. And but why is it we rarely find servant leaders? And he mentions that in a recent article in the California Management Review, they spoke about how narcissistic leaders often get away being successful. So, could you share more on this?
Yeah. So Prashant has asked a very, very insightful question, and what he's saying is that what I'm describing really is servant leadership. Of course, it is that, because if you talk about wholesome leadership that is committed to serving the greater good, obviously Robert Greenleaf called it servant leadership, and that's perfectly fine. There is really no difference if you're operating from that deeper source within yourself and functioning as a leader. You will see that you can call it by many names, but it's essentially the same thing. So I quite agree. It is very much like servant leadership. As far as how narcissistic leaders get away with what they do, well, look, this is also part of the mystery of life. I don't have an answer, but if there is something that we think is not okay, I said this at the very beginning, if there is something that we think is inappropriate, unjust, or something which needs to be changed, it is up to us. And I like this little the law of two hands. If it has to be, it is up to me. Don't look anywhere else. If you think there are too many narcissistic leaders in the world who need to be pulled back, well, don't look anywhere else. You dwell into your interiority, into your inner dimensions, and get cracking. There is no other way.
I hope Prashant gets that answer. And like I said, everything that you're saying and you're sharing needs another discussion altogether with you. Each one of those insights are so useful. I also want to quickly talk about, I remember you mentioned about interpersonal excellence.
Yes.
You've spoken about it, you've written about it, and this is a concept that you very strongly believe in also.
Yes.
And all the more in, like I said, no matter how many times do we repeat this, but this is so much more relevant in today's time also, the interpersonal excellence, because our engagements, our interactions are so much more entangled, intertwined. What do you have to share on this?
You know, it's a bit of a conundrum that on the one hand, human beings, we cherish the company of other people. But at the same time, one of the greatest sources of anguish to people is also other people. So it's very one of those conundrums. But as a wholesome leader, we all have to learn how to get along with everybody. And the whole idea of getting rid of prejudice and getting rid of things like racism is all linked to this idea of the fact that we understand that all of us are interconnected. We're all part of the same web of life. If there is one fruit tree here which is getting its sustenance from planet Earth, there's another fruit tree on the side, again linked to the same Earth. But taking this tree analogy further, what does happen sometimes is the leaf on the extreme top of this tree doesn't know that it is connected to the leaf at the bottom left of the tree. So we start to think of us as a different because we identify so much with our individual bodies and the way we look and the way we talk that we are unable to embrace every other life form, even though the source for all of us, our life spirit, is identical. There is no difference whatsoever. So when we talk about interpersonal excellence, I really do believe that as a wholesome leader, you cannot exclude anyone. You can't say, oh, I will only work with people from this nationality or people from this geography or people of this makeup or people of that orientation. I'm sorry, you have to embrace everybody as a leader. That's what's wholesome about your leadership. And so getting along with everybody is also a question of refining your interiority, getting rid of any of the beliefs that are causing prejudice. Oh, these guys aren't good. Oh, this man who is looking a little different from me is this, that, or the other. These are all conditioned learning. These are not there when you were born. Your beautiful mind, infinite mind, was placid and pure and pristine and gleaming, not a sully in it. These are added on things you learned. Oh my God, that guy there who looks this way, she or he is a problematic person. I'm sorry, wholesome leaders dump every single such inappropriate learned behavior and embrace everybody. And that, Ajit, is the starting point for interpersonal excellence. Of course, it goes further. You got to communicate properly. You got to make sure that you take care of the well-being of others and yourself. You communicate assertively. You make sure that everybody engages with you properly, honestly, truthfully. But it starts with you jettisoning all these prejudices and conditionings that reside in that beautiful infinite pool of your mind, which is otherwise so pure, but it's gotten sullied with all this. I can see you smiling, Ajit.
I got a very interesting question from one of our audience members, and
Yes.
on that request, the question is anonymous, and I'm glad somebody asked this. And in fact, I wanted to ask you also personally that you have worked with a variety of leaders from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different challenges, and the question is that as a leader, being confident and having the right conviction, the right reason, the right purpose is very important. But how do you cultivate and how do you improve your confidence and conviction? And especially, uh, the times are such that people feel nervous. There is anxiety. These are critical times. How does
Yes.
someone as a leader improve, their confidence, their conviction, their belief? How do they practice it?
Okay.
And
So
and
I
also
think
also have you would you share any such any incident or story where you came across a leader who successfully did it? It's very human for us to feel nervous and anxious.
absolutely. So look, it is absolutely normal, as you said, Ajit, for us to feel anxious and nervous, and especially in times like this when there is uncertainty. I think the uncertainty that we feel, we have to appreciate it. We got to validate that it happens. It's perfectly normal and human. The bigger question is, how do you, like a ball made of rubber, how do you bounce back? How do you demonstrate the resilience to come back to that state of calmness and effectiveness by linking and plumbing into your interiority, into your inner dimension, and pulling out all the many capabilities that already exist. So, first and foremost, what causes anxiety? Anxiety is caused by the absence of clarity, or your expectations are of a certain kind, and that those get thwarted. So you have to appreciate that. Look, when you were born, Ajit, did you have a say in coming to this realm called planet Earth? Did you
Not at all.
plan your? Not at all, exactly. So if you couldn't plan your birth, how do you expect that you can plan every single thing about your life? It's not possible. Life will
True.
evolve on its own terms. And life, of which we are a part, is not something which works for us. We, being a part of life, have to go with life's flow. So that's a fundamental change in our thinking. Life is going to take its own trajectory. Pathogens will come. How they come, we don't know. But the fact is, there will be uncertainty. So the question is, when you start by understanding that you cannot control everything, it releases a large part of your anxiety and tension. And the second important thing that leaders have to do is, realize that everything that you achieve or do can only be done in this moment now. The past is dead and gone. Even what we said 55 minutes ago is over. It's just a memory now. What will happen in the future is again a guess or a conjecture. What we have to do is right now. So if leaders understand that whatever has to be done now, it greatly diminishes anxiety and it strengthens your ability to do things. Because now you're not depending on things working out a little differently. No, you're saying, look, I have these capabilities. I'm committed to this objective, to this vision. I will do whatever has to be done right now. I will take along with me whoever has to be taken right now, and I will deliver as best as I can. If things happen in a way that's good for you, great. If they don't work out in that future now, you will do what has to be done as a great leader. So conviction has to be developed consciously through mindfulness, through understanding your gifts, but more importantly, realizing that whatever has to be done now. And being agitated about the future or being regretful about the past is not going to help. Ajit?
Yeah. So, you know, what is that one thing? No, I realize that there's a strong relation that you establish between thinking and cognition. And even in answering this question, also you exactly emphasized on that. But now, as a viewer, I'm absolutely intrigued. I completely believe in what you're saying. There is a greater understanding, clarity in my thoughts on leadership. I acknowledge. Now, how can I practice, or is this something that you can tell the audience that, maybe try doing this, or something that's real, something, they would just love
Yeah.
to get onto
You
it.
know, yes, I think that's very, very well put, Ajit. There is people do need to strengthen the points that we've discussed today if they have to be truly effective and wholesome leaders. And of course, I have only touched the very, very the top part of the whole thing. There's much more. There are detailed practices. There's many more skills that we need to acquire and so on, which of course can be the subject of another masterclass. But let me share with you two practices that I think will really, really make us all better, sharper leaders sharper, wholesome leaders. The first one is, let us learn to be present in the now all the time. Two things happen as a consequence of this. Number one, our agitation diminishes because we aren't regretting the past, we aren't worrying about the future. We act in this present moment. So it calms our mind. And when we are interacting with people in the present moment, we become better listeners. And our interpersonal capabilities also improve, therefore, because we become better listeners. We can connect better with other people. So that is one thing I would strongly request all the viewers to please practice. Let us practice to be here and now. Let us have a presence in this here and now moment all the time. Let all our energies be here, not regretting the past, not worrying about the boss or the boss's boss or the work or whatever. No, let's be here and now. That's a very, very important part. The second part is, and that's a trickier one, but it's important. We need to understand that the great gift of our life spirit and our infinite mind space, the capabilities of our mind, these are an absolute valuable gift. They are so valuable. Nothing in the world, nothing in this whole cosmos can replace it. It is a gift that is so valuable, but it's been given to you free. You had to pay nothing for it. Please express gratitude for what you are at all times. Your humanness, exactly, your humanness. You can't be a leader unless you're completely human. You can't be a great leader. You can't even move a blade of grass unless you have plumbed into your interiority, into your inner dimensions, and then you act from the gifts that you have there. So gratitude is important, and being here and now is important. And since I'm talking about gratitude, I'm also keen to pull out something from a book that my wife and I wrote. It's called Navigating the Maze, and I think every professional who really wants to learn more about what I've just said should read this book. It's really, my wife Savita and I wrote this. It's called Navigating the Maze, and so people say, navigate the maze of what? I said, navigating the maze of leadership and life, because managing your life is also managing yourself and leading others. So in this since you started off with this concern about the pandemic and everybody's in lockdown and concerned, I want to read out a little portion from this book of ours. It says, it's called the Prayer of Gratitude. And it says, be thankful that you don't already have everything you desire. If you did, what would there be to look forward to? Be thankful when you don't know something, for it gives you the opportunity to learn. Be thankful for difficult times, like now. During those times, you grow. Be thankful for your limitations. They give you opportunities for improvement. Be thankful for each new challenge, which will build your strength and character and your inner dimensions. Be thankful for your mistakes. They will teach you valuable lessons. Be thankful when you're tired and weary after a hard day, because it means you've given it all to reach out for the greater good of everybody else. Ajit.
One second, sorry. My apologies, I was on mute. Sorry. No, I'm saying thank you for sharing this prayer of gratitude. My gratitude, for sharing this, and I love the title of the book. And I think somewhere we ourselves put ourselves into a maze, that we only created, and
Absolutely.
And we need to navigate it. I mean, we like it or not, we put ourselves into that maze. I have a couple of questions, and from the first thing that you shared, that's so important to be be really present in that moment, because that's extremely powerful, that's magical. It has the ability to do so much. I have a question here, and uh, this is interesting because one of our participants, Amit, says that successful leaders have to take risks, right? And sometimes it could be an opportunity, it could be a moment or a circumstance where they have to, in that very moment, take a tough decision. And he says that management jargons based on maths and algorithms and all these prediction models, the risk committee has come up with, let's say, a solution or a choice. But as a leader, you have a different gut feeling, right? And both are strong. Okay. So there's no right or wrong, but how does one think in that circumstance?
It's a dilemma. It's a situation that any leader can encounter. Let me also say that while data analysis and machine learning and digging through data will give you certain insights, at the end of the day, it is the leaders and the leaders team that has to take a call. And for that, you require to be courageous. Not all the answers will ever be available to you, because it's been seen that even if you keep on asking for many more perspectives, you slice and dice the data in different ways, at the end of the day, you still have to take a call. So research has shown that after doing all the analysis, it is, even if you don't have the full answer, take an informed decision, but take a decision, because it is far better to take a decision than to get into analysis paralysis and be indecisive and be vacillating. Vacillation is never a good thing. So to answer this question from Amit, I think it's important to appreciate that being decisive is a leadership quality. You have to cultivate this quality. I would say that you have to always go by a gut feel, because your gut feel may not always be right. But if you have cultivated your presence in the moment, and you feel that despite what the data shows, there might be something that has been missed out, and you have a very strong inner feeling that other way is better, go for it. You may be wrong, but even that's fine, because who says that we are robots, nor are we infallible. We're human, so we do what we think is right in that moment.
Bharat, I have this one last question from one of our members in the audience, and it's actually two questions, but both are asked by the same gentleman, so I'll put them together. We have Rajesh Chaudhary, who's I think from the steel and automobile industry, and he says, how should leaders behave in this period, especially in when they're working in the steel and automobile industry? So it's a slightly industry specific question, and I think it comes from the fact that a lot of uncertainty and a lot of downturn the industry is facing. But followed up with that is, like you said, that you quoted from the book, and when you were saying the prayer of gratitude, that we are grateful that even these tough times are happening, and when these difficult times happen, we are pushed to think beyond our limits. That's when we start thinking new.
Yes.
That's when the idea of innovation kicks in. You want to solve problems differently, build new skills. So how do you even build this ability to become more innovative and creative?
Okay, so first of all, Rajesh, thank you for your question. And over the past 3 months, whatever happened in India, let's focus on India, was it all okay with all these workmen and their families having to trudge long distances, and some of them not being, not getting the water or the food that they wanted? So this has been a crisis of huge proportions, the lockdown and the pandemic and so on. Now, as a leader, if you are sensitive and if you have noticed these things, you may start by taking a pledge saying that we in our organization will not let this ever happen again. And that is a very, very important establishment of the fact that something needs to be done differently. The second thing that we noticed during this lockdown, for the first time in decades, we could hear birds chirping, the air quality was suddenly better, the water bodies started to rejuvenate and became cleaner. So there was a greater improvement in the environment overall. The environment which was getting literally choked with the effluents and the stuff that companies bring out. So if that is something you notice, that's another opportunity for change. So in the same way, I think this pandemic and the changes that it has brought about are a big reminder to leaders that something needs to change. It cannot be business as usual. We have to become environmentally more sustainable. We have to become socially just. We can't treat our labor only as a cost. We can't keep on pushing labor prices down to a point where the poor laborers are really living, eking out a living. That can't happen. Number three, we have to promote the well-being of all people and not just of the shareholders, but stakeholders, everybody who is impacted by the business. And finally, we mustn't forget that whatever business does is for is business functions within life. Life does not function for business. So if you are doing something which is killing the environment, think of it as a thing that kills all of humanity, because at the end of the day, if the effluents that we spew out are killing our forests, are polluting our oceans, something is not okay. So my point really is that if you start off with this canvas of possibilities, you will automatically become innovative. You think of this as a problem that you and your team have to solve, and see what magic will emerge.
So, Bharat, a few of our members from the audience, and especially this one gentleman, has said that could we have more sessions with you like this? And on behalf of the Outstanding Speakers Bureau, on behalf of Bharat, I would first like to really, thank for appreciating a session like this. We will definitely plan, more such masterclasses and engagements with Bharat. Bharat, how do we get hold of you again and
Well,
do more of these things?
the Outstanding Speakers Bureau are an amazing team, and I'm delighted that they invited me to have this masterclass with this wonderful audience. So I think the audience has to be told to get in touch with them, and I'm sure they will be able to figure something out.
And meanwhile, they can obviously visit your website and also get a copy of your book.
Yes, the book is available on Amazon. It's called Navigating the Maze. It's by Savita Bhan Vaklu, my wife, and myself. And it is a book which I really think would answer in greater detail some of the points that we have discussed today.
Thank you so much, Bharat. This was really, really inspiring and insightful. Like I said, we've been so busy running and, creating our own maze, new maze every day, and then struggling at the end of the day how to get out of that maze. It's so refreshing to, find someone such as you, who brings such calmness and stability in thoughts, allows us to think on dimensions that we have really never even thought about, look at things from a different lens. And this brings a big change in all of us at a very, very fundamental level, right? So I'm extremely grateful, personally, and I think on behalf of everyone who was listening, for everyone who joined us from across the world, from Europe, US, so many people from India. I also want to thank all the audience members for sharing your thoughts, asking questions. And as Bharat has promised, we'll definitely think of more such engagements, more such masterclasses. And thank you, the Outstanding Speakers Bureau, for every day, every week, they are creating such amazing conversations, with a variety of people on different platforms. And we look forward to see all of you again soon. Bharat, I'm really, really grateful. Thank you so much. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, my closing thoughts, Ajit. First of all, thank you to you. Thank you to the wonderful audience that has asked such pointed questions, and my personal gratitude to Kriti from the Outstanding Speakers Bureau, Shreya, Jasnoor, Danish, and of course, thanks to you. You've been an extraordinary conversation host, and I was delighted to be here. So thank you very much. Have a great weekend, everybody, and thanks again. Bye bye.